Welcome back. In this video, we are going to add the OnOperator functionality using contains and starts with on strings. So strings have different kinds of methods. So for example, let's create a string here. So var my name will be Dennis, for example, or let's make it even a sentence. So sentence will be Dennis is a coder. And now I can check if sentence, for example, contains a certain word, for example. So I could check if it contains the word Dennis. What this method will then do is it will return true or it will return false. So what I can now do is if sentence contains Dennis, then I can return, well, I can just assign some text to my TV input. I could just say something like Dennis. Okay, let's just test this real quick, and it will make a little clearer what's up. So you see 8 Dennis, 9 Dennis, and so forth. So what happens here is we have this sentence and we check if the sentence contains something. And if it contains something, so the sentence has this something that we are checking with, in this case Dennis, then this if statement is true and the code that comes inside of those brackets will be executed. And in this case, I use some stupid dummy code which just appends Dennis to it. Super stupid stuff. But this will just be important for you to further understand what we are going to use in a bit. Okay, and now we will need a new method that will check if an operator is added. So is operator added? And I will need to pass a string to it. And this method should return a Boolean. Okay, so we pass a string and it returns a Boolean, which means we need to return something now. We need to use this return keyword. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a new feature that we haven't used yet. And I'm just going to use this if statement to then return true or false directly. So this is pretty neat because you don't need to create all of the code before that. You can just use it after the return statement. So what I'm going to check is if the string that is given to this is operator added method that we are creating here, if it starts with a certain letter. So starts with, and you see there's this method that exists for strings, which checks if a certain character is given at the beginning of that string that is passed. So value is a string. So if the string would be something like -5, for example, now, then this statement where it starts with a minus would be true. And then whatever code comes after those brackets would be executed. Okay. And in my case, I'm just going to say false. So what I do with this is I'm basically ignoring a minus here. So what I want to do with this is once I press the minus button, and let's rerun this real quick without these lines here. So what I want to check is if the minus is at the beginning, I want to ignore it. This basically means I want to be able to work with results that have negative values and so forth. That's why I'm using this prefix minus. So I'm just ignoring the minus at the beginning. That's what I'm saying with this statement here. And then else, I need to check a couple of things. I need to check if the value contains, for example, a slash, which would be division. Or if the value contains a multiplication, or if value contains a plus, and so forth. Okay, so we need to do that for all operations. Let me do it for the final one as well here. Value dot contains the minus sign. So what will happen here is it will check if either of those statements is true. So if there is a slash sign for division, or a multiplication sign or a star for multiplication, a plus for addition, and a minus for subtraction, if any of that is given, then it will return true. And if none of those is given, it will also return false. So that's what this isOperatorAdded method should basically do. It will just tell us if in the text there is a minus, a plus, a multiplication, or a slash sign, unless it's at the beginning of the value that is given. Okay, and the value that is given will be the text that we get from the text view. So let's now use this method, and therefore I'm going to use the OnOperator method that we will call once we click on any of the operators. So here, first I'm going to check if the last entry was a numeric, and I'm going to check if the operator, so isOperatorAdded, is not true. So if this statement here will return false. So here we can just check the text view input dot text to string. Now unfortunately we cannot just do it because text view input is a nullable. So what we need to do instead then is to use the let operation. So here tv input question mark dot text question mark dot let, and only in that case we can execute this code here. So we need to use this save call symbol to get the value before passing the parameter. So we're checking, does TV input text exist? And if it does, then execute this code. So that's what this TV input question mark dot text question mark dot let does for us. So here, if last numeric and isOperatorAdded with the text view input that we have exists, then do something with it. So unfortunately, because we are using this let here, we need to use it differently. We cannot just use TV input text here, but the actual text is given to us with this it. So this it here, you can see it's grayed out, it char sequence. That's how this let thing works, right? It gives us whatever is existing if this statement or both of these statements are true. So if TV input is not empty and text is not empty, then it will give us the char sequence, which is the text itself. So now we can just go ahead and use it. You see here, it exists now. And now what we can do with it is to use it inside of here. So we can make a string out of it because it is a char sequence, but we need it to be a string. And then we can actually run some operations. I'll go over this in a second once more because I think it's a little complicated what's up here. But let's first of all make sure that we now append to our text view input. So we need to append whatever was inside the button. Okay, and then from that, the text. So we get the view, which is this view that is passed to the OnOperator method, which will be called once we click on any of the operators. So for example, this operator. So here, instead of using onDigit, I want to use OnOperator. Same goes here. Instead of using onDigit for the multiplication, I want to use OnOperator. For the minus sign, the same story, OnOperator, and for the plus sign, the same story again. And here for the plus sign as well, I want to execute OnOperator. So all those four buttons here will now call the OnOperator method, this one here, which will check if the text view input is empty or not. If it's not empty, it will do whatever we want to do in here. So what we're saying is append whatever the button has as text to the existing text view input text. And then make sure that the last numeric is set to false and last dot is set to false as well. So this it here that I'm using, this it is bold here, is this char sequence, which is the value we receive from the lambda. So this here is a lambda that we have, which is automatically created for us when we are using let. And let is something you use for nullables, as we have them here. This is one nullable and another nullable. So you can have nullable chaining here. So just once again, really quickly, what we're checking is once we click on any of the operators here, we are checking is text view input empty. Well, that's just something we have to do for safety. Otherwise we could crash our application if it was empty, but it's not either way. So we're then checking, is the last numeric, so was the last value that the user entered a number? Because if it wasn't a number, we can't do the operation. We don't want to do any operations because let's say we had this statement here, 9 divided. So what is this? There is no operation to be done. So the last value that has been entered has to be a number. So it has to be numeric. That's why we're checking, is it numeric? And also, is an operator not added to the string already? So that means, do we already have an operator inside of this statement or not? In this case, there is an operator already, so I cannot add another operator. That's what I'm double checking here. Because if there is an operator already, I don't want to do anything. But if there's no operator added yet, then I want to add the existing operator that is on the button that I'm clicking right now. So that's what this code here in the OnOperator method will do. And that's why we needed this helper method, this is operator added, for our purposes here. Now let's run this. And I know this was a rather complex lecture, but now let's run this and see if we can add more operators. And you can see we are limited. We can only add one operator, even though the minus at the beginning is being ignored, as you see. So we can have a minus at the beginning, but we cannot have a minus after that. Now this is of course limiting us if we wanted to subtract or multiply negative numbers. So here, let's say we want to multiply a negative number, that wouldn't work. So that's something we cannot do with our current solution that we have here. But that's fine for now. And in the next video, we are going to go ahead and see how we can add subtraction to our application.